Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It's lovely to see you. Happy Sunday morning. Let's start with a little orientation. So just if you're able to come to sitting or just come to a mindful mental space. Taking a couple of deep breaths. And let's take a moment to tune in again to that connection between womb and heart that we established yesterday. So you might even want to place one hand on your heart, one hand on the womb space. And just feel into that connection now, that energetic superhighway. And feel as if the energy between womb and heart space comes in a loop. So as you inhale, you're drawing energy from the womb up the front of the belly and chest into the heart space. And as you exhale, that line of energy, that thread or that vortex of energy drops from heart space down the back of the body to womb space. And this energetic loop almost creates like an oval shape. So it's an inhale from womb up the front of the belly and the chest to the heart, and an exhale from heart down the back to the womb once again. And I'd like you to imagine that that energy loop is a radiant blood red color. And it's creating an oval shape, like the shape of an egg. The egg being the symbol for fertility, for birthing, for new beginnings, springtime, abundance. Creating that red egg imagery by means of breathing and anchoring into your own body, your own embodiment. Just a few more rounds like this, inhaling from base up to heart, exhaling from heart back to base. Let your belly be soft, let your womb be soft, let your pelvic bowl be soft. Let your heart be soft, let your jaw be released, let your face be relaxed, skin of the face soft. And now gently allow that imagery of the egg and the movement of the breath to drop away. Bring your hands to rest in your lap. And just taking a moment to check in with your whole body experience, the whole embodiment. Noticing where there might be any tension, where there might be any resistance. I know that no one on our live call is pregnant, but there will be pregnant women listening to the replay. So those of you who are pregnant, tapping into the energetic of carrying your beautiful baby, and spirit soul enveloped within the safety of your uterus. And let's take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of our land, of country, particularly those who carry the ancestral maternal line and the wisdom as birth keepers. And we acknowledge all the teachers who come before us, particularly for me in this specific space, Jane Hardwick Collins and Heather Bridge. Asia Sula. And we acknowledge extra potently, with extra deepening, our own personal culture, ancestry, and heritage. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshvara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I bow down in reverence to all my teachers, that teacher which is this life I have been given and continue to lead, that teacher which is all hardship and difficulty on my path, that teacher who is nearby, and that teacher who is beyond all this, loving and supreme. Namaste. Welcome to our sacred space. If you have an oil that you would like to use today, please take it now. I'm using magnolia, and then today the pure vetiver. I spoke a little bit about vetiver yesterday. It's really one of the most magical oils. I was speaking about it yesterday in the context of the fragrance reminding me of, so you can take some drops of oil on your hand now and do your oil protocol. The fragrance reminding me of the woods that I grew up in. Vetiver has a sedative effect. It slows you down, basically. And even, look, you can see as I'm taking a drop of it, it takes forever to come out of the bottle because it's so thick and viscous. So that slows you down as well. Like if you're having an impatient moment, just waiting for a drop of the oil to release itself. It's of the earth, and I feel that the earthing energetic principle is very, very important when we're doing this red thread work, because it's easy to get stuck in our heads when actually where we'll really have the breakthroughs is in our bodies and in connection to Mama Earth, in connection to Gaia. So just taking a couple of deep breaths of whichever oil you have felt drawn to today. Rose and geranium are also very good for this work. They work particularly in the realm of heart. The vetiver is the anchoring, the womb. I really think of vetiver as the oil of womb healing. Very, very good for Vata in Ayurveda. If you are a Vata person or you're dealing with Vata, vetiver is your magical remedy. Okay, beautiful. I actually wanted to start this morning with a check-in. I'm really delighted that those of you who were here live yesterday have rejoined today, because we get to continue the thread. So I'd love to hear how you went overnight, any downloads that dropped in after yesterday's session, anything that came up for you. yeah, just how you're doing going into this morning's work. And then I've got a few things I want to share. And then we're going to continue on building out the red thread. Yesterday, we got to the beginnings of the embodiment of sexuality. We didn't even get to moon cycle yet, but that's where we're going to pick up and continue our thread into the realm of birthing today. But before we do that, let's just do a little check-in. I had a beautiful evening yesterday, just peaceful and calm. My older boys, or my middle boys, I should say, were with their dad. My older boys live with me full time, but they're teenagers, so they're pretty independent. As long as I feed them, they kind of do their own thing. Yeah, we just had a very peaceful, calm, relaxing afternoon, which was lovely. Did a little bit of gardening. And this space for this workshop and for this red thread work is very in my sphere at the moment. Like, I feel it very deeply. And I'm doing a training right now with a woman called Heather Bridge, who you've heard me acknowledge as one of the teachers. She, you can follow her on Instagram. I'll put her link in the notes. She's an amazing teacher. She's pretty esoteric, I'm not going to lie. Like, some of the stuff she teaches, I'm like, whoa, okay, that's really out there. So, you know, it's like with all teachers, you know, connect at the point that you connect. She's also a Christian, so she talks about God in the context of Jesus and Mary, which for me is fine because I'm very good at kind of multi-denominational. Like, it doesn't bother me. God is God, the name doesn't matter. But she definitely comes with that Christian element. So if that's something that would be off-putting, then I wouldn't recommend her work. But what she is an absolute master at, like I don't know, she just has a very, very special gift for, is anchoring into the feminine embodiment. So she does a lot of womb meditations, a lot of womb energetic reflections. She doesn't call it red thread work, but definitely a lot of this sort of somatic sense of the red thread. So yeah, her work is really beautiful. I've been doing a training with her that's coming to completion now. She really works into the space of ceremony as well, which I really appreciate. And so all of that's to say that the space I've been in has been one of really slowing down, which for me as a pitta type in Ayurveda, always on the go, always busy, is an unusual, like it's a little bit different. Like, I'm good at calibrating my nervous system, but the slowness is a different vibration. I think also heading towards the end of the year, a little bit of that slower energy is really nice. And the truth is, you can't rush this work. This red thread work and this womb embodiment work, it cannot be done on a linear timeline. You can't decide that you're going to do it this afternoon or next week, or, you know, it's like you make the windows and the spaciousness and the time, and you do the practices, and then it kind of literally, like a rose coming into bloom, it unfurls. So I feel for myself, I'm very much in that unfurling state. And it's interesting too, because for those of you who are teachers, this might be a helpful reflection around when do we start to share the work that we're doing in our own personal lives. So my perspective on that is this: it's really, really valuable, and you'll do your most potent teaching when you share that which is most alive in you at the time. Like, when you share what you're really into, you know, like I'm using loads of vetiver oil in my life right now, so I'm sharing the teachings of vetiver oil with you because it's potent for me, right? However, there's also another element, which is that as a teacher and someone who holds space, it's not necessarily the most intelligent thing to do to hold space for something when you're very rawly in it, when it feels raw, like an open wound, you know, like that's not the time to be sharing. In fact, that can actually be quite blurry in terms of boundaries, because if you're still processing something, it's very hard for you to hold a safe space for other people. So we have to come to a certain point of reconciliation, steadiness, stability, and healing before we really start to hold space for others, and balance that with that which is really alive in ourselves. And for me, teaching this work, sharing this work with you at the moment is a very good example, because I have been on a big healing journey after having had my daughter, because I didn't have the birthing experience I wanted with her. And you've heard me speak about that before. And it's very connected to the red thread journey. And so that was nearly 2 years ago now, which is mind-blowing to me. It's gone so fast. But I'm still in that. And I'm coming out of it. Like, it's sort of evolving and changing, and I'm definitely at the tail end of it, but it's still there. It's still present. And the work I've been doing with Jane and the work I've been doing with Heather are part of that. And so for me, this is a potent time to be teaching. It's actually almost the perfect timing, this content, because it's very in me. It's very alive. It's part of what I've been studying. It's part of what I've been embodying. It's in my literally pranamaya kosha, my energy field. It's in my daily contemplations and my daily ruminations. But it's not raw. It's no longer, if I'd birthed Leela, felt quite overwhelmed by what had happened, and then immediately gone into sharing and teaching and processing with all my students, that's not me holding safe space. That's me just kind of using my community as a dumping ground for stuff I'm still processing. That's not the right way. However, if you get to the point where you're completely reconciled and it's, done and dusted and it's no longer alive in you, then the teachings aren't quite so potent because they're done, and so I just wanted to share that with you. For those of you who are teachers or who share this work, there's a sweet spot between being in it and being alive in you, but it not being raw or open. And sometimes we get that a little bit wrong. Sometimes we share too early and it hurts us, and it can be quite hard to hold safe space. And other times we leave it too long and we don't share when it's still juicy. And so I think as teachers, playing with that is really beautiful. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a really, full on experience like birthing a baby. It could be something much more mild and light, but just noticing that dance of what am I sharing with my students and why and how, and just having a real awareness and mindfulness around that. So yeah, I wanted to share that with you just in terms of my process around this, and to share that teaching this container, sharing these 4 hours with you is very, very much feeling for me like a real next step or a continuing evolution in my teaching. And that's really lovely to be in this space with you. So who would like to open up with a sharing? Sarah, and then we'll go to Emma.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My mother came over last night. Well, she didn't come over till late yesterday afternoon. Actually, no, it was about 6 o'clock by the time she got here. So I had a very relaxed day, very flowing day, very productive day. Really just chose to get into the washing and just felt really, I just had a really good day. One of my other daughter's actually a bit sick, so just nurturing her a little bit too. But I noticed all the stuff coming up towards the afternoon, towards my mother, just the frustration, the resistance, and I was able to shift my view of all of that quite quickly, which felt amazing. However, it was about half an hour before she arrived and half an hour after she arrived, it's like my body just went into this. It sort of happened without me even realizing, and I was on my Shakti mat on my lounge room floor when my partner got home from work, and he just looked down at me. I said, I can't go out there. I just had to, whatever was happening in my body was, so, which is quite common, but it felt a lot more, I felt the connection to everything that was coming to light through yesterday's session. And I did have a cranial sacral session a couple of days ago. So I am feeling that that's still moving, a lot of that. So, it's all very timely. Anyway, the evening went on and I felt a lot better and processed, and I felt a lot of resistance around having a conversation with her, just asking the questions. I didn't want to create this, surface stuff. Anyway, long story short, I did. and I found out some incredible pieces of information that, sure enough, exactly what came through yesterday, the comparisons to my brother's birth, like everything is about my brother when I first start asking about my birth. And then she told me that I was a natural birth. She had a great pregnancy, there was no troubles, and it was all like, and I felt this beautiful flowing. But after she had me, she got very high blood pressure, and she was in hospital for a week, and she didn't elaborate. Like, I was asking questions, like I was curious, because at first she didn't talk to the birth. And I said, what about my actual birth though? How was the experience for you? And that's when I sensed there's a lot of pain and I'm not sure, a lot of stuff that's connected to my birth, because I had high blood pressure when I was pregnant, and I had preeclampsia, and I had an emergency birth, and I had all this fear in my birthing experience around me dying, not my babies. Anyhow, I then asked about my nana's birth of her, and she didn't really have any recollections, but she did drop this bombshell that my grandmother did have a stillborn. She wasn't quite, before my mum, so she wasn't quite sure the distance, the time period. But I just got goosebumps then. I really felt there's a lot of guilt. And then that's when I was speaking last night to my partner. I didn't realize I needed to speak about all this. And I found myself speaking, and it was just, I felt like someone had I'm picturing, it sounds ridiculous, I'm picturing one of those, when you're laying concrete, one of those things that are smoothing out the concrete. It felt like someone was going like that, just like smoothing me, and it was all just kind of coming out. And as I got into bed last night, I laid there and just went, guilt. That's like, is a big, big underlying thread in there. And I just felt like the visuals I had when I channeled my nana and birthing of my mother. Just that overwhelming joy, yet underlying guilt came through. And then I sort of pieced that with my mother and feeling guilty towards my brother. And I even came out and I said to my mum as well, I said, so did you call me Sarah because Bruce wanted to? Do you feel that was to include him? And so he didn't feel left out? Without hesitancy, she went, yeah. So just very, I don't think I'm going to get much more than this from her, but who knows?
And this might be enough.
Yeah,
exactly. This might be, and it's beautiful timing that you were able to have that conversation with her whilst in this container.
Yeah.
A couple of things from what you just said. One, around the stillborn, which obviously is ancestral, that's going back. Yes. So one thing I would recommend, one thing I think you could do, which is really beautiful, because, we spoke yesterday about the ancestral sort of blueprint. So you've got those who come before, those who will come ahead, like your daughters and your grandchildren, and those who stand in alliance, your sisters, us, basically. And one of the beautiful things that we can do, and this is actually part of yogic teaching and Vedic work, it's called tarpana in yogic philosophy, is do prayers and blessings and ritual for the ancestors, including those who have passed. And so it might be really beautiful for you to do some kind of very simple ritual recognition of that child that passed, because that spirit soul is still, it may be reincarnate by now, depends on what you believe, but it's a spirit soul, let's just say that. And often with that generation, I'm going to guess, and I bet you I'm right, that there wasn't much acknowledgement done. There probably wasn't a proper grieving. There probably wasn't a proper speaking, processing, because it was just like, this is painful. Let's just, and because of your mother has that imprint quite strongly in her, from what you've described, the kind of oh, it's emotionally painful, let's just put it in a cupboard and lock the door, throw away the key.
Yeah.
You can, one of the ways you can pattern interrupt that generational, which is so common. I mean, many of us will have that in our history. I certainly do.
Yeah.
It's do the work of healing the ancestors.
Yeah. Yeah. And interestingly, in alignment with that, I feel it's connected to that. Excuse me, my nana was a devout Christian. She passed away when I was 19. You know, and your memories as a teenager are, I wish, like I've always, oh God, if she was around when I had children, because my nana was a very, very spiritual person, whilst devout Christian, religious. My cousins, who also are very connected with me, which are my mum's brother, one of the twins, and they're twins. So there's a lot of twins in the mix. We're all, it's like we're all from the same egg. Like we're all big feelers. We're all just are on these journeys of healing and spirituality, and just the way that they're like 10 years older than me. So the way that they've always spoken to me, and I've always been close with them, yet we never see each other. And it might be every few years, but it's like we saw each other yesterday, and this bond is phenomenal. But the way they would always speak to me about my nana was just so powerful, and how intuitive she was, and like it's just all this. Even I feel it in me now as I'm saying this. It's like I just want to, I want to tap into that, you know, like I've got
well,
that.
you can, that's available for you. I mean, you can talk to her and invite her into your spaces, and I mean, it's so powerful. Like, you know, yesterday I was talking about my teachers, right, and the power of having them in my life. And then there's an extra added potency. I don't have this, but if you have a figure in your life that's in your actual bloodline that you elevate in that way. I mean, you know, my mother-in-law of my ex-husband, I feel a little bit that way about. Like, I feel like she's a real guardian angel watching over us. But again, not bloodline for my children, which is lovely, but not for me. If that's in your maternal bloodline, that, Sarah, that's so potent. Like, yeah, that's something you can really draw strength from, and really be in conversation with, and like really keep the portal open. No,
I feel I will work with that.
Yeah. And then the other thing and it's sort of a reciprocal thing as well. It's symbiotic, because on the one hand you're calling in support and help, and on the other hand you're healing hurt from that line that probably wasn't able to be healed. Like, you can do the work of ancestrally healing the birth of a stillborn, which is honestly probably one of the most traumatic things a woman can go through. Like, it's up there. Other than losing a child, you know, it's high trauma. You're in the weave, you know. The other thing I wanted to say that just came through when you were speaking is this fear of dying, and this might be a little too obvious, but I did feel it when you were speaking, the connection between the fear of dying physically, like, oh, I'm going to physically die and leave my body, versus the fear of huge parts of who you're dying, right? So I feel like for your journey, that's probably, and the thing about twins is, like, we're all mothers here, so, you know, we know, like, I mean, I've got 5 children. People often say to me, oh my God, how do you do it? Blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't have 2 at once. Like, that's so full on. Like, can you imagine guys that don't have twins? Like, just double every part of it. So that's like a baptism by fire. That's you've been through something in birthing.
And there was lots, like, I'm not gonna, like, I could sit here and talk for hours. We could, but there was just so many connective threads occurring for me last night. Like, literally, like, here's the thread, and then like here, just all these little bits around my birth, and then my mum, and conversations and moments I've had when my daughters were in my arms, moments this week. Like, my God, the big one that dropped in yesterday was around that resentment piece. How the resentment is actually coming from my mother towards my brother. And the way this week with my eldest daughter, how funny is that? She always says she's the eldest daughter. She's 1 minute older. But she always G's up Kenzie and says she's the eldest daughter.
Yeah.
She acts like it. But in saying that, Kenzie's mature, more grounded and connected to herself. But yeah, the way that things have been this week with Ollie have been there's a lot of resentment. I've literally looked at my partner the other day and went, get her out of my face.
Yeah.
Didn't want anything to do with her. And I just see that
we all have those moments
playing out this week. Yeah. So I feel it's all just been that potency and leading up to this. And
it's beautiful. You're right in the thick of it, and I love it. It's so good. Thank you.
It is. It's beautiful.
Emma.
Yeah, hi everyone. I think it's interesting. I don't have a lot of like space in my life for this kind of processing, which is interesting. But I do notice, like, I can notice in the past and even now, like parallels between some of the threads that I was beginning to draw out. And I think I'm realizing also that it's why I find a lot of I think, as mothers, we find a lot of the decisions around like, work and mothering and how to do it all and how to make the right decisions. And I know I'm always, like I'm thinking about adding another day of work on next year. And I know these decisions feel really big. And I think just looking at my, maternal lineage and, just a lot of the sacrifices and, things that happened, especially around, needing to give up work to follow their husbands' careers, needing to give up work because of having so many kids and things. I think, I really feel just like a huge weight. I know we all do in some way, but for me, it feels like there's a bit of ancestral stuff playing out there. And I've also realized that I feel that I carry a bit of the red thread on my paternal side as well, because my grandmother on that side, it's 4 boys that she has, and I'm the eldest female grandchild over there. So I kind of feel like, it's kind of skipped all of them. They've kind of, and there's a lot of, kind of just emotional trauma that they went through. So I kind of feel like there's a bit of that's there as well, that there's a bit of some of that trickling through. And then I've just my daughter is also the eldest in that like new generation, the eldest female in that generation that's come along. So so just kind of recognizing, I think that, I don't know, there is something I think about being like the firstborn girl in a new generation, and how some of that comes there. So just noticing a few parallels and just some of the recurring themes in my life. And I think it's helping me also to have a bit more, probably a bit more compassion for like, maybe, this is another reason why this feels so hard and so heavy, is that there is just such a conditioning over the generations around some of these decisions that we as women have been making. So to be trying to make counter decisions, like, partly because of the comments that I get within my family, but also just because it's been done, it's what's passed down. So it kind of helps me to be like, okay, that's why this is so hard. And just real conscious of all those little moments, all those big moments where I'm falling kind of into that pattern and kind of perpetuating some of that stuff as well. And I guess, for me, like, as a yoga teacher and business owner, I think, a lot of my work, like one of the reasons I do it is for myself. And I think it is a big kind of like, what you were saying, Katie, at the beginning about, how we kind of alchemize our own learnings and share them. I think, that's a really big part for me of why I'm doing what I'm doing. I do feel that it's a part for me of kind of healing the red thread. Yeah.
And oftentimes when something that other people don't seem to struggle with as much as we are is very present, it's just because of that ancestral thread, and it is a relief almost. It's like you can kind of go, oh, okay, exactly what you said, Emma. I can see why this is really hard, because I'm not just carrying my load, I'm carrying the load. And that's happening on lots of levels, right? So that's happening energetically from red thread, like what you've literally on an energetic level inherited, but it's also happening in a very real practical, mind-based way of like the snipey comment that your mother made, or, you know, the way that your husband didn't acknowledge this, or, you know what I mean? So it's like it's happening in that more esoteric, energetic realm, but it's also a lived, embodied daily experience. And you know, it's interesting because you just said, you know, everyone struggles with the balance between work and mothering and how to figure that out. And I actually don't think that's true. I think a lot of women don't struggle with it. I think some women, many women, are very clear that they just want to work and they have no guilt or upset around putting their child or children in daycare or care pretty young, and it's very easy for them. And, you know, I have a lot of friends like that who just have no conflict around it. And then other women are very clear they want to be a stay-at-home mum and they don't want to work, and that's very easeful for them and there's no conflict around that, and that's beautiful too. And then there's others, and I'm definitely one of them, who feel very torn and very stuck in the middle and pulled, like, I think Sarah can relate to this as well, constantly. And the guilt of, I'm not working hard enough on my work and I'm not doing it justice, and I'm not mothering hard enough over here and I'm not doing that justice. And I'm like literally feeling like, I mean, I can say for myself, 5 kids in, it's much, much, much better now than it was with the first 1 or 2, where I really was, it was a journey for me. I found my steady place with it now, but I do think there's, I don't want to say always because that's too much of a generalization, but very, very often there's a red thread piece in that. So we're inheriting it. And what I have observed in my own life and in the lives of many women that I've worked with over the years is very often it's a perfectionist piece. It's the pressure of the woman who, and I got this from my mother without any doubt whatsoever, works, is accomplished in her career, and also has a perfect home and is a perfect wife, and everything is perfect. You know, it's that pressure of like, I've got it all together, I can have it all. And it just leads to depletion and exhaustion. Like, and nothing is fun anymore. You know, you don't enjoy working, you don't enjoy mothering, because it's just all exhausting because you're keeping too many balls in the air. So what that manifested in for my mother was a lot of resentment, like this real put upon martyrdom. Oh, look what I've done for you. Look what I've done for everyone, you know. And, you know, my parents got divorced when I was 18. My father had an affair and left my mother. And she was just so shocked that she hadn't been perfect enough. That was the part that was hardest for her. She was like, but I was just I was so perfect. How could he leave me? And I think, and, you know, it's she hasn't done this journey, but I think where the beautiful part of that journey can come in is when you just drop into, it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to have the perfect child, be the perfect mother. There can be some bits that are imperfect, you know. Yeah. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's some of my reflections on that. And I definitely share that journey with you. You and I have spoken about that before.
Yeah.
But I think it's wrong to say everyone does, because it's not true. It's actually not true. It's a specific thing that some women really agonize over. And I'm quite jealous of the women that don't. You know, like I have a friend who has a big corporate career. She was laughing at me the other day because I put Leela in daycare and I go and get her. So she goes in the morning when I drop my boys at school, and I pick her up before I pick my boys up from school. So she does like a morning basically at daycare. And she was laughing at me because daycare's open till 6 p.m. and it's the same fee regardless. So I can basically leave Leela in there till 6 p.m. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like going and getting her at 2 o'clock when you could have 4 more hours of relaxing. You know, it doesn't even cross her mind that. And whereas I'm like going and getting Leela half an hour before so that she can feel settled and integrated, and I'm like sitting with her and making sure we've had one-on-one time before we pick up the boys so she feels her cup is full and blah, blah, blah. My friend's like, what's wrong with you? She's fine, you know? And I can really see, and her daughters are teenagers now. They're fine. They have a really great relationship. They're healthy, wholesome teenagers that love their mum. Like they don't have a scrap of like, why did we go to daycare for long days when we were only 1, you know? So it's really interesting. But I still carry that burden. 5 kids in, I would actually say I'm still overcompensating. Not as much as I was, but it's definitely still there, and it's red thread. It's intergenerational. And noticing the patterning in your own mother, or it could be grandmother, could be whatever, and then just deciding to do it differently, I think is a really big part of that that healing.
Yeah, that's really interesting perspective. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. And and one last piece on that is there actually is no perfect, because even if you do all the things you think are perfect, you're going to fuck them up in some way. And it won't be the way that you think, like you'll do all the things that you think are like absolutely spot on, and then there'll be some little thread somewhere that they've got a complaint about, or that you haven't done, or that you can see, oh, I should have done that differently. And it's never the thing that you're struggling so hard to do well, in my experience. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Trudy.
Good morning, beautiful souls. Thank you for sharing and being vulnerable. For myself, going into how I kind of rippled out from yesterday morning session, we had a very huge day cleaning in the house. John has somehow connected to scabies. So it was a big clean out. And the interesting thing was the focus was in cleaning his room. And so I could actually feel this big shift in his room, which was quite nice. We had a bit of a conversation through a few things last night that kind of, I don't know what your observation and things is to this. I feel that sometimes like life is a bit like a movie, and people put us in the roles that they choose us to be. And I kind of have this thing now where I just sort of say, they're placing me in this role. Do I choose to honor playing that, or thank you, but no thank you? So that was a very big thing that came up for me. And I would say that I probably connect that into the thing that's come up with around my mum being in hospital, having a hysterectomy at my birth, and then identifying when I was 12, going, oh, like finding something, a letter, a note, and my cousin telling me that my mum was in hospital when I was born. And then I went, oh, well, that's why they all don't like me, because that happened to mum. So owning probably her nearly dying, not knowing that she actually did, but I guess that's kind of the way that an 11, 12-year-old girl looked at it. When I went to bed last night, it was quite interesting because I was laying there and it's like my mind was just chattering. And I got a bit scared because I went, what have I opened up? So I sort of said to myself, just breathe. And told myself that I was safe. I felt my dad was in my bed with me. One of the things that I identify probably relate more to my dad's side. I kind of like view the stories of my dad's side in my soul, because there is heritage. Apparently, one of my great-great-grandmothers used to read crystal balls by the ocean at Cornwall, and they've always called me the gypsy. And I have had experiences where she has connected to me, and I love that. We're apparently connected to Pirates of Penzance, and so I can see with that little girl inside of me that loved all those imaginary stories and things, like how you speak of Winnie the Pooh. I feel like within me there was more sharing of that stuff from my dad's side. My experience with my first son is reflective of my pop. And now my son's journey is being reflective of him. So it just blows my mind observing the strength of this thread running through my son, to the point of now the experience he's going through. Even though I did a lot of work, he's kind of going through it on another, he's not in it, but he's sort of like, he's had a child with a lady who's got a son to another man, and there's like just, you know, maintenance stuff going on, and him observing situations that he observed me going through. So that's kind of quite strong. But the thing that I kind of, it's funny, like I observe a lot of the stories of my dad's side, because we lived with them until I was 6, near them in Adelaide, and then we came up to my mum's family. So it's like I feel like I have this, I connect him more to mum, but the story memory is dad's paternal side.
Is your dad still alive?
Yes. Yeah. And we are disconnected
Okay.
due to, I've identified he is my abuser, and I just keep myself safe. So then I have that double level of guilt of not connecting with my family. However, for my children and their children, I remove us from that situation because it's a heavy level of abuse.
I think that's a really smart thing to do. I think that's absolutely the right thing to do, to create a really strong, powerful boundary.
Yeah.
So when you speak about when you're in bed feeling so much fear coming up and the presence of your father being there, it makes complete sense, right? Because, and this is where it's so interesting, that even if someone isn't in physically, because the way you were speaking, I thought he was dead, but it's like he is kind of dead to you in many ways. Even when the physical presence is removed, the thread of that person who has interrupted your karmic path so deeply, the healing work takes a long time. But what you have to remember, Trudy, is that, and I truly believe this, I really, really do, is that your body, mind, spirit, soul will only bring stuff up when you're actually in capacity to deal with it. Like, it's coming up because you actually do have the ability to deal with it, and the strength and the support and the, you know, and so when you do feel scared and you do feel overwhelmed, just reassure yourself of that. Remind yourself it's okay. I've got the capacity to process this, and that's exactly what you're doing. You're discharging, you're processing, you're releasing. Because the other option is it stays in your body. Remember, I used that word calcified yesterday, where things kind of turn to stone, or they turn even worse into sort of poison. And you're doing the work not just for yourself, but for your children and your grandchildren, and of not allowing that calcification to happen, but working it through, and baby steps, one step at a time. It doesn't all have to be done, you know, I mean, these big breakthrough moments can happen, but also we can just gently work through it. But also, whilst all that is happening, maintaining a rock solid boundary in the physical world, in the real world, you know, because that's keeping you safe.
I had a very strong moment that happened where I finally felt like I took my little girl back. Like, my dad was my bully, and I took my granddaughter, my first biological granddaughter, to meet him because he reached out to me. He's now in his 80s, and he's still threading that pattern between all the siblings. And so he contacted me and he said, I need to see you. So I honoured my elder, and I thought it'd be nice for him to meet Bubby. And we went in all like fresh, present, and he probably gave me 10 minutes of niceness. There was the usual accusation that she's possibly not my son's daughter, this is how he talks towards women, calling her boy. And I probably got 10 minutes of kind of niceness, And then he went in for his usual playing me and my brother and us against each other. And I did say to him, I spoke up to him and I said, "You are a victim. You just continuously shame and blame people. I didn't bring my grandchild here to sit in your toxicness, and I'm not doing this." And I shared a few other things with him, but it's kind of like literally having this 6-month-old sitting on my lap, and I had the choice and the knowing that it was okay to remove her from that. So as much as it was overwhelming and it was quite scary and things like that, it was quite a very, I thank him for it, because it's literally like I walked in that day and I took me back. So I have a lot of gratitude for that. And yeah,
beautiful. How long ago was that?
probably maybe 3 months ago, 2 months ago.
You're right in the thick of this healing process. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's good for you. Good for you. Like really stepping back into that power. And isn't it interesting how it can often be hard for us to do it for ourselves, but when it's for our children or our grandchildren, my God, it's like, all right, you can mess with me, but you're not going to mess with them.
Always. My children have been my strength. Like getting out of domestic violence, especially when I had my daughter, it was like something just dropped in.
Yeah.
You know, I spoke of my mum having breast cancer, and I was like, that's it. This is not what you hand to your daughter.
Yeah.
So I love my children dearly in that way, that they're working that strength up in me.
So beautiful. And that's the completion of a karmic cycle. I was having exactly the same conversation with a friend last night. She was an addict. She had, severe drug and alcohol dependency. And when she had her son, she got sober, and we were just talking about it. And she was saying, I tried so many things to get sober. I did everything I thought I could, and I just couldn't do it. Like I just remained an addict. And she said, but when I found out I was pregnant, her son's like 9 years old now. She's been sober ever since. She was like, a switch just switched. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this to him. I'm not, it stops now. And she just got sober. And I think sometimes it's that call of, this is the red thread in action, right? It's like, the cycle ends now. I'm not going to perpetuate this for another round. So what you're describing is a beautiful, beautiful example of that.
Because it's all addiction in a way, whether it's accepting abuse, whether it's drugs, alcohol, it's all an addiction. And the thing that I'm loving, that as I process through my journey, my little girl with it, in my heart, I just wish peace for him. And I just, as much as he was wanting me and my brother to rectify, I walked away and I went, first of all, realistically, you would think that you would be wanting to make amends with me, not worrying about being of service to somebody else. And then I went, no, the only person that he needs to make peace with before he dies is himself and his choices, because we come in with love and we leave with how we've loved. And that's all I wish for him.
Yeah. And that's a big part of the reconciliation too, when the anger and the resentment dissipates. I mean, it will still be there, it still comes, but they no longer have a hold on you because you've really let go. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. So powerful. All right, let's jump into some of our journaling work, because I'm aware of our time. So we talked about this a little bit in the summit. So for those of you who are present in the summit or watch the replay, you will have started the journey of diving into this. But let's begin with your first menstrual cycle. So your first bleed, the first time you got your period. What is it? Just journaling freely. What is it you remember? What was the feeling tone? Not just the story of like what happened and who helped you and all of that, but what was the feeling tone? What was the energetic undercurrent around that experience, first moon cycle? And then following into that, the feelings that you had from whenever you can remember, from as young as you can remember, around whether or not you would become a mother. Did you always want to be a mother? Did you not? Did you think you would have children? Did you not think about it at all? Around what age do you recall? Like, I know for myself, I remember so clearly, I turned 28 and it was like a switch went off and I just wanted kids. Like, it was just a biological, just very strong. And up until that point, I hadn't really thought about it that much. So what was that journey like for you? Even you might reflect as a young girl, did you play with dolls? Did you think about being a mummy? Was that part of your narrative or not really? So you as mother, and not even yet as actually as a mother, but you in the realm of contemplation of motherhood. And for those of you watching the replay, and it may be relevant for some of you live too, what that might feel like in terms of future children. Like, are you done with having children? Is there possibility of more children? What's the feeling vibration around that too? And then from here, we move into the stories of our childbearing years. And this includes any pregnancies, any miscarriages, any pregnancy terminations, and all the energetics that happened around those. And then the birthing of any of your children. So maybe just leave the birthing to the side for the moment. We'll come to that. But before that, conception journeys, fertility journeys, definitely there is a significance around, whether pregnancies were planned or unplanned, whether they were equally wanted from both sides. That's relevant too, like mother and father. What was the relationship dynamic? What was the feeling tone around conception, pregnancy? That often there's, for example, stories of abortion where one person wanted a termination more than another. There might be regret. And now sometimes you'll have a really clear understanding of what your thoughts and your feelings around the situation were and why they were what they were. And other times you'll know what they were, but you won't know why. And what, in the Ayurvedic scriptures, it tells us that our thoughts and our feelings might be inherited up to 7 generations back. This is in scripture, right? This isn't like, actually there's a modern school of science called epigenetics, which shows that our DNA goes back multiple generations. But scripturally, philosophically, in the yogic tradition, we are asked to consider that our thoughts and our feelings may be inherited from up to 7 generations back. So what that means is you might not know why you feel like you feel, because none of us can go back 7 generations and ask what was going on. So there will be certain areas in which you get it, like, oh, this is because of this or that's because of that. And then there'll be some that are just a bit mysterious, like, it could be anything. Why do I have this random fear of dying? Or why do I worry that my kids will get sick? Or why did I know that I had to have an abortion with this baby because I didn't want this baby to come into the world, like with a certainty, or whatever it might be. And the important part to remember here is that we don't need to attribute understanding. It's enough for us to just feel into whatever it is we're feeling into, to notice it, to observe it, to work with it. We may have an understanding, a rational, logical understanding, but we may not, and it's okay if we don't. It's not necessary to the letting go or to the healing that we're able to understand every part of the jigsaw puzzle. All we have to do is put the pieces into place. Okay, and now we're going to move into some very specific prompts, and we're going to do these as almost like a quick fire round, right? Like, I don't want you to overthink it. This is just like what immediately comes before the conscious mind kicks in, before the analysis. So try not to self-edit or filter too much. Just allow yourself to let it flow through. So the first one is, about birth, I believe. I'm writing them in the chat if you need that. About birth, I believe. Go. Not too much thinking. Just whatever downloads, like a printer that's printing out a little kind of receipt. About birth, I believe. You don't have to share this with anyone. So if there's stuff that comes up that feels not very palatable or a bit embarrassing, or you just feel a bit ashamed of, it's okay. Just let it come out and you don't have to share it. Next one. As a mother, I am. As a mother, I am. And then added onto this, in the way that my own mother did or did not for me. So you're reflecting now on how you are as a mother and which elements of that are a celebration of how you were parented and which elements of that are in reaction to how you were parented, as in, I'm doing it differently. I'll give you an example from my own life, just to give a really clear, practical example. My mother believes that it's really important to let young children cry to get themselves to sleep so that they can learn to self-regulate and not be spoilt. And I firmly believe that is not the right way. And so I have been very diligent with not leaving my children to cry at night. Like, I'm ultra responsive to that as a reaction to the fact that my mother was not available for me if I was crying at night. Okay, next one. My fear about birth is or was, depending on whether it's imminent for you or something from the past. My fear about birth was, my fear about birth is. I love that you're doing this red thread work, Emma, and you're literally having to wrangle your daughter's feet out of the way so that you can do it. I'm sure there's some deep symbolism in that. And now some of those questions will have felt quite heavy, and the last two questions are very light. So let's just take a moment, just put your pen down for a second. And as I said yesterday, all of this work is to be continued. Like, there's no way this happens in one session. These are journaling prompts you can come back to again and again. So I just want to invite you to do some light tapping across your chest, maybe down your arms, head, face. Let's just like zhuzh the energy a bit, like just release some of that energy. If you want to stand up, if you want to shake it out, like whatever you want to do, just to let go. A couple of deep breaths, just somatically, physically releasing some of whatever just came up. And then coming back to it. Two last prompts. I will complete or end a cycle by ... I will complete or end a cycle by. I will complete or end a cycle by. One more minute just to finish up. So coming back to any one of those prompts and just completing 1 more minute. Okay. Prudy's just asked a question, which I can answer quickly. Eros is the feminine and logos is the masculine. I think it's Latin. I don't actually know. It might even be ancient Greek, but it's just another way of talking about the energy of the masculine feminine. So in Chinese culture, it's yin and yang. In yoga, it's Ida and Pingala, which is the masculine is the Pingala, the feminine is the Ida. And oh, you're saying it's Greek. Beautiful. So that's Eros and Logos. That came from Heather Bridge. She talks about that a lot. That's just the way she speaks about the lens of masculine, feminine. Okay, the way I would like to do today in terms of our timing is I would like to do a guided relaxation now that allows you to pull together all those journaling pieces. And then I'd like to end with a final closing circle where you share whatever's alive for you right now. Knowing that although there's some sense of completion, there's also just this kind of, that's why it's called a thread. There's a continuous process happening. So just take a moment now to come into relaxation. We'll be going for about 15 minutes. You might want to lie down. Make sure you're comfortable. Take a moment to set yourself up so you can completely relax and be fully present for that experience. So beginning by relaxing your physical body, just really dropping in, because we've done a lot of head work today. So just really dropping into physical body. Placing one hand on the womb and one hand on the heart space. And now notice what you're feeling in your body, just literally observing what you are feeling in your body now as it arises. And that might be a mixed bag, could be a mixture of several different things. And you might have ideas around whether that's positive or negative. And we don't need to get involved in the labeling. So just let the labeling go. And now take a moment to take responsibility for what you're feeling. It's your feeling, although you might be able to, connect it to something that's happened in the past or something someone did. Right now in this moment, be fully responsible for whatever it is you're feeling. It is your feeling. Witness any emotions in your body associated with how you're feeling. So feelings and emotions are slightly different. Feeling is sensation. Emotion is the reaction to the sensation. So observe now any emotional reactions that you are having to sensation. And again, you may, even without realizing it, drop into labeling these feelings and emotions, but there's no need. The labels aren't necessary. Just noticing, simple observation. And now you're going to release the emotion through means of breathing. So acknowledge that you're in the process of allowing emotions to move through you. That's the first piece. Acknowledge that you are in the process of allowing emotions to move through you. And then by means of breathing, let go. Each exhalation, an opportunity to let go. Each exhalation, just a continuous flowing through, a continuous moving through, a continuous release. Exhaling, releasing, exhaling, releasing. Whatever comes up, whatever is present, good or bad, exhale, release. And if you get stuck in a particular place or something starts to feel a bit heavy, again, just back to the breath. By means of breathing, exhale, release. Once again, coming back to the breath by means of exhalation, allowing emotions, allowing feelings to leave the body like they're just dissolving back to source. They're releasing back to source. Nothing is stuck. Nothing is stagnant. Nothing is gluey or sticky. It's just moving through. Okay, now allowing that process of breathing and releasing to just float away and placing your hands anywhere on your body now that you feel called. So any positioning on your body that feels like it needs a little bit of extra love or a little bit of extra healing, might be the womb, might be the heart space, might be another area of your body. Using your own hands almost like a soothing comfort in the same way that you might soothe or comfort a child. or someone who is in distress by just gently placing your hands upon them. So self-soothing, using your own touch, your own somatic experience to soothe and relax your body. And then beginning to bring awareness back into your physical body. Gently moving your fingers and your toes. As you feel ready, rolling over onto your right side. Make a pillow with your hands. Just rest here for a few moments. And then taking your time, slowly coming up to sitting and turning your camera back on. And I just, as you guys who are here with me live are doing that, take your time. I just wanted to share for those who are listening to the replay, because the women who are live with me at the moment, none of them are pregnant. Although we've had a focus on birth, it hasn't been as direct as it would be if we'd had women who are pregnant live on the call. So for those of you who are listening to the replay who are pregnant, I just wanted to make the link of this work with the birthing space, pathway into the birthing space. And all I can really say about that is I can't make a direct link. Like I can't tell you in a step-by-step kind of process way how doing the red thread work leads to a more empowered birthing experience. But I can tell you it does. And I know that as we do this work, we heal in labor, in pregnancy, in postnatal, and in the birthing space itself. So that connection is very real. It's very alive. But it might not necessarily be very obvious. And a book I'll recommend for our pregnant mamas who are watching replay is this book. It's called 10 Moons by Jane Hardwicke Collins. And this particularly focuses on red thread work for pregnancy and birth. So we have worked with that and worked into that over the last 2 days in these sessions, but perhaps not as much as we would have done had we had some pregnant mamas on the call live. And if you do want to dive into that more deeply, I definitely recommend doing the work that we've done and the processes that we've done in these recordings, definitely, but also diving into Jane's book. Okay, ladies, so I'd love to complete our time together in this beautiful container with a final sharing from each of you and just really hear what's come up, hear where you're at, what came up in the journaling, what came up in the embodiment and the emotional processing piece, and just kind of create some containment, some completion in our process today. Who feels called to jump in first?
Yeah, I can go first.
Emma.
Yeah, we're just getting ready to leave the house. I'm just trying to step away from the activity. Yeah, what's present for me is it's interesting because a lot of the stuff, like I don't have any huge things around birth. Like even the thing about fearing about birth, I was like, nah, like I'm pretty good actually. But yeah, I can feel like, especially around the mothering and the work and the sacrifice and the female lineage thing, like that's just such a recurring theme for me, and this has been a really great lens to see it through. And then a piece that I'm not like as you were saying, like the jigsaw is there, we might not understand like why it's like that. A piece that I don't understand, that I know I need to, or I feel I need to kind of find my peace with it is we had a really long conception journey to our first one with lots of like big emotions and waiting and things. And that's one that I don't really know how that fits into the red thread at the moment. Like there's nothing jumping out at me. And I'm a bit like, what is it? But what is it? Like if I could just understand, I'd be able to accept it a bit more. So yeah, so that's something. But I think that's probably just a bit of like trusting in the process around it. And then yeah, with like, you know, working through stuff with my current partner, yeah, around like, you know, what we're up to, and yeah, healing from past actions and things. Like yeah, it's interesting because like we just began another conception journey when stuff came to light. So yeah, it's like, oh man, now I get to have another like really long and difficult conception journey. So yeah, so that's kind of something that's there, but it's really, yeah, like unanswered for the time being. So yeah, just feeling that I need to be patient with that, but I can feel myself not wanting to be patient with it, like just wanting answers, just wanting to heal whatever needs to be healed over there. But
Right.
yeah, it's
and this is the masculine, right? This is the part of us that goes, but I want to tie a bow around this. I want this to be perfect. And we just don't get to do that. You know, it's so interesting because I've just finished writing this book, as you guys know, I've shared with you before. And the thing about writing a book that's really interesting, especially a personal book, a sort of memoir style, is that everyone tells you the book has to have a beginning, a middle, and an ending, right? It has to have a narrative. And usually when it's self-help or personal development, they want a hero's journey, right? A completion, a sense of like a cycle was done and this is how I did it kind of thing. And I just refused again and again and again. And I went back and forth with my publishers on this several times to write a narrative like that. And, you know, for me, what they most, because a lot of that book is about me processing my divorce and sort of becoming a single mum and then, you know, repartnering and having a new baby. And they really wanted me to just like pack away the story of the divorce like it was done. And I'm like, you know, I've still got 4 kids with this person and I still have to deal with him sometimes several times a day. Like there is no bow around the box and it's done and it's complete. It's ongoing, and there are good days and there are bad days, and life moves in cycles, and it can't be a narrative like that. And when I look at the books, and I actually ended up in, you know, with the publishers, because that we were back and forth so much, and it was like, okay, I'm going to write something about this in the book, right? And so I actually write in the book, I know the reader wants to experience, you know, a happy ending or a completion much as you would in a novel. And I say, I myself, you know, I love watching period drama. I love reading trashy romance novels. I want the happy ending. I want the completion. Like nothing pisses me off more than if the lead character dies or it doesn't get like resolved, or, you know, the lead romance doesn't come to fruition. Like I want that as much as the next person. But in the interest of genuine personal development and actual, you know, self-improvement, life is never like that. And then I cite a couple of books that are very famous books, you know, Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert, in which at the end she meets the love of her life, who a few months later she ends up marrying and then divorcing and then falls in love with her best friend. So that's all a big mess and schmozzle. And then also Glennon Doyle's book Untamed, which is one of my favorite books, in which, you know, the book before she's ended again, happily married with her husband and they've reconciled, and then jump to the next book and her husband and her are getting a divorce. So we don't get, unfortunately in life, and I think this is why we're so drawn to the story and the happy ending and the beautiful conclusion, we don't get that in real life. And I think one of the biggest skills that we can learn, and I say this as much to myself as to Emma or to anyone else, is to just sit in the incomplete, the still resolving, the it's unfolding, it's a bit messy truth of life. And love the novels and the movies for the beautiful sense of completion, but know that we don't ever really get that in our relationships, but also in our parenting journey as well, you know, because there's good days and bad days as a parent. And and Trudy, I'm sure, can attest to this even more because her kids are older than mine. The more they grow up, the more drama and life and things happen. So it's never ending. As long as we are incarnate in a physical body, life is happening and unfolding, and we don't get to a healed, concluded, finalized point. All we get to do is live in the complexity and become somewhat okay with it. So I totally hear you, Emma. I feel like there's a lot of symmetry in your where you're at and where I'm at in my journey too. And all I've learned is to live in the unresolved, the ever-flowing unresolved. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Sarah, did you want to go next?
Yes, sorry, I was just, for my own purpose, writing things down. I just love your words, Katie. I feel so much emotion when I repeat them, and I write, like I frantically write like your quotes. It's like I just want to share them with the world, and because they land so much, and yeah, I don't know, I feel, thank you, because you just have the most beautiful way of articulating the journey, and I feel so much resonance, like we're completely different trajectories in our lives, with what we've experienced, yet there's just so much. I feel I've gained a real deep sense of peace from these sessions. Yeah, my brain starts to go into overdrive, which in my business, it's hilarious, because I was sitting here before, again, things drop in. I'm like, why the hell am I thinking that? I'm like thinking of you and what you could do with this in a long-term training. I'm like, oh, Sarah, like, what's going on? Like, I'm just like, oh my God, there's so much you could do with this. Like, there's just so much. Anyway, it's just, I just.
Don't worry, it's all coming. I have the same ideas too, so we're on the same page.
Or Alpha, maybe I'm just so connected to you through this. I don't know. But yeah, the big things that have come through for me are something over the years that's come through is to just really be a lot more curious with that unresolved, ness of life, and just get more curious. The ancestral connection, without a doubt, is huge. Prior to motherhood, I was never someone that, again, this is my story I've formulated, but I literally was never someone that aspired to get married or have kids or buy the house. I've always just considered myself like, where do I get this from? I used to think that pre-motherhood. I still think it now, and this is bringing through now a sense of peace and curiosity to explore this, rather than just rely on my parents and actual humans to give me answers, which I think is what I've done. But I used to have this deep knowing, my only desire to have children, well, my only knowing that I was even going to have children was when I was working in the corporate space. And I just knew that when I have children one day, this won't be my life. I just knew. Didn't know when I was having kids, didn't know who I was having kids with, just knew. But then with Kurt, I just knew. And I used to have this, I wish I had the experience and the healing and the knowledge and the trainings I have now back then, because, I was never on contraception, but I just knew we wouldn't fall pregnant. Like I used to say to him, we'd have this I was a very sexual person, and I just would say to him, like, he'd be all like resistant, like, like, no, we can't have kids, we're not ready. Oh my God, money, Whereas I'd just sit there and go, look, you need to chill the fuck out. I can't explain this to you, but we're not going to fall pregnant. I don't know how I know this. I just fucking know, because so long as your energy's like this, it's not going to happen. And as soon as that started to land for him, because we weren't falling pregnant, and we were having unprotected sex, and it was all very, we were just having fun. And I knew, though, that I wanted children soon. But I wasn't pushing, I wasn't pressuring. And then as soon as he was on board energetically, it happened. So we were very blessed in that regard. And then we had twins. But anyway, I'm off track now. Again, my point to that is just this knowing. I used to live with this. I used to live with this sense of intuition that I feel I've had to excavate all the other stuff to get to this deeper sense of intuition in myself over the years. And that's what I'm still coming back to. So it's sort of that dance between finding my confidence in being a mother and a human and a woman, and my spiritual knowing that is there. So yeah, so death and rebirth, a big thing as well that's landed, and just trusting myself, and just recognizing those death and rebirth phases as being okay and being okay with them. And the big one, I've written big here for some reason, it's not necessary to understand what you said earlier about
that was a huge one for me. Yeah. Because that's when we drop into the masculine, when we're trying to figure it out. And sometimes we just have to go, you know what? It just is. It just is.
Yeah. And I feel like an element of that has occurred with my brother and my dad and my mum. But I feel like that's really just, I'm held in that now and I'm okay with that. So yeah, just I feel like I've really received a big sense of peace and knowing, and I can now, okay, it's about me, focus on me in that spiritual sense. And I feel there's some exploring to do with my grandmother, without a doubt. But yeah, just, I don't know, no emotion came up during the meditation as well. I just felt there's just so much physical energy moving through my body, which has become a very, very, I think there's something big there as well for me to explore, because I am an energy worker. So I feel I'm working with that in new ways. So I'm going to get a lot more curious around that to see what comes through.
Love it. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Trudy.
Hi, Katie. Thank you for that beautiful meditation and the reminder to just move in the body. One of the things that came through for myself when we were doing the last process of the journaling, especially when kind of looking at reclaiming birth, is when we went into the fear of like birth. For me, it was interesting because I had 3 C-sections, and one of the fears was having an operation. I went, wow, isn't that sad to think that that was the thought process around birth? Yeah, and when I looked at conception, being honest, I feel that within my environment and just where the journey was around me in reference to women, huge unawareness and knowing of self-worth. There was a lot of promiscuous and just kind of needing love and looking for love. It was not realistically about, I guess, more than that. And so 2 miscarriages, most of my pregnancy out of the 5, when I look at it, there was only 1 planned, and that was because of the loss of a child. So, oh, well, you know, we've adjusted to this. We've identified that this has kind of happened. It's not there. Well, let's fill the hole. And, you know, that is part of the journey that we can go through as women when we connect into that little soul and the new idea. We then might sort of like, yeah, I guess the way that I describe it was like filling a hole, if that makes sense. However, what came through as well was that realistically, even though I never really planned any, I feel that they chose me. And I would do nothing. I wouldn't change anything.
I always think it's a very symbiotic relationship. You know, sometimes we call the baby in very strongly, especially if you're on a conception journey. Other times the baby just chooses you, and you know, you're not ready, unbeknownst to you, kind of thing. And when I look at my 5 conceptions, I can very much see the energetic differences between, yes, I'm calling in a baby now, bringing a spirit soul in, versus my daughter, who just was like, yeah, I'm in for these guys. And we were like, you know, and now of course it's perfect. But yeah, I completely agree with you. It could be a bit of both, but oftentimes it's quite strongly one or the other.
And like, you know, myself, my son and my daughter are all Saggies, and Yeah, they're definitely, Josh has an Aries ascendant and he is very pitta. And he was coming into this world no matter what.
Yeah.
And same with Shah, whereas Harley, my planned one, you know, just totally different. He's a little Scorpio. Yeah, so poor thing. I kind of feel sorry for him at times, having 3 Sagittariuses around him and being this little floaty Scorpio. Yeah, and I just kind of feel I've had a lot coming through around bringing love back to birth. And I feel that to birth physically, it's sort of when we become a mum, and possibly even before, it's like we're birthing ourselves. And when I kind of drop into that, it's like the birth can be symbolic of where we're at in our evolution. And working with that space can help to be able to maybe create change in that journey of our actual physical birth, when we can drop in and connect with that rebirthing of ourselves.
Beautiful. I couldn't have put it better myself. Beautiful.
Yeah, and the thing that came forward for me, because I've always been around children, I love children. I remember babysitting my niece at 5 when my sister was showering. You know, just always, I was the one that babies would be calm with. No one else might be able to hold them other than mum, but they would always come to me. And I have such gratitude for that. And I worked in childcare for 12 years. And I would come home very overwhelmed some days, feeling like I couldn't fix it. But choosing to just focus on being a safe space for them as an individual. And when I was journaling, I heard this little voice say, because someone said to me, Trudy, maybe you're doing what you're doing because you're trying to rescue the little girl inside of yourself. And I could see that. It's something it's like my little girl said, no, in a way, it's like she got placed in a place where being with the children created change of my subconscious association being a child within community.
Yeah.
And being a safe place. Yeah. So
yeah, I understand that. Sometimes we have to see children to realize, hang on a minute, I was a child when these things happened in my own life. And then we see ourselves in the context of a child rather than all the trappings that come with being an adult. Yeah. Thank you.
I've learned to understand it's like, I guess I connect in with it as in a child work, yet it's really aligns with the thread. Yeah.
Yeah. Part of your own healing journey. Thank you. Oh, I want to thank all 3 of you for being on this journey with me over the last couple of days. It's really been such a privilege, and you've been so open and so willing to go deep and to do this work, which makes my job a dream. So thank you. Thank you for honoring where I'm at with all of this, and for sharing just so openly and so deeply. And for the people listening to the replay, thank you for engaging with this work and being in this space. And yeah, as Sarah alluded to, it is to be continued. Like, I'm definitely going to do more in this realm, more of this type of work, because it's definitely very present for me at the moment. So yeah, watch this space. There'll be more coming. For now, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you, ladies. Thanks for joining me. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Namaste.